Biden has not surrounded himself with the best and the brightest. I mean, that's quite evident when you see who's in charge of energy policy. It's quite evident when you see who's in charge of the economic policy that is determining the fate of our country, including, by the way, the likes of somebody who should know better, who has become nothing more than a political hack. And I'm talking about Janet Yellen. Every day now, she's doing something that's pretty sketchy. And it's because she is an economist, but she's been thrust into an environment where she has to be a political economist. And I don't think she's really very good at it. Here she is somehow trying to justify and gaslight you by making things up. This is a blatant lie that she says. I want you to see it. She's making things up, trying to suggest that somehow the success that we saw economically under Donald Trump, and I'm talking the 3 years before March 2020 hit, that was non-existent. It didn't really happen. I mean, gaslighting on steroids, take it away. Janet Yellen.
That the signature policy from the Trump years was the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And it promised an investment boom, which really did not materialize. It gave huge tax breaks to corporations and to wealthy individuals. And it resulted in an enormous increase in the deficit and lowered tax revenues below historic norms. And I think it's responsible for many of...
It's wrong. It's actually a lie. I think we get some data we can show you, Drew. If you pull up graphic number 5, this tax plan, ladies and gentlemen, this thing worked. We had the highest tax revenues we have ever had on record, historic high. Shortly after the whole tax plan was initiated, a record high, 4.9 trillion, 1.6 trillion, or 48% higher than when the Trump tax cuts were passed, 884 billion higher than CBO's projections. This is back in 2022. It was a result, you see, of those tax cuts that were put in. In other words, policy works. Good economic policy works. But you got to have good stuff. So it's continued to work. He wants to roll all this back, mind you. And tax revenues kept growing and growing and growing throughout the administration. In fact, if you look back on that time period, what did you also see? Not only did tax receipts grow to the highest level on record, and then some continuing on after Donald Trump had left, thanks to the policies that he has put in place, not only did those grow, but incomes grew, median incomes grew. This is a big deal. Individual tax revenues, they reached a record high of 2.6 trillion, over 1 trillion, or 66% higher than when the Trump tax cuts were passed, and $642 billion higher than CBO projections for 2022. So in other words, the hangover effect going forward, it just continued working and continued working and continued working. And they're going to stop it all. Even though, what do we see? In the third year of the Trump presidency, right through March of 2020, you saw that median incomes had actually increased the most in some 50 years. And I'm talking median incomes adjusted for inflation, right? You have to adjust for inflation. Joe Biden and company, they can't quite figure out why people are upset and they don't feel good about the economy because, oh, but you know, hey, things are great, right? Well, no, they're not that great. And they're not that great because there's so much inflation. But none of them in the White House are willing to admit it. And Joe Biden is off in La La Land somewhere. You know, he's drinking a whole other kind of Kool-Aid, if you know what I mean. He's going to need some of that ahead of the big debate on Thursday anyway. Janet Yellen is one of the enablers, okay? An enabler on steroid, because even when my former colleague Neil Cavuto was like, hey, Janet, don't you ever feel like calling him out when he's like, hey, I inherited 9% inflation. Don't you feel like saying, no, that was only 1.4%. She totally humiliates herself. I can't believe this because it's really pretty sickening how much these people are willing to go along with such nonsense, even the economists. Here we go.
I wonder if you could weigh in, Secretary, on Joe Biden constantly saying, and I don't believe he's ever corrected it, ma'am, that inflation was 9% when he assumed office. And I've talked about this with other economic advisors of the White House, and they find ways to say, well, it was getting there, and that's what he's referring to. But he keeps saying it was 9% when he took office. You're the top money person in the White House, and you know that was not the case. Have you ever tried to pull him aside and say, Mr. President, just so you know, inflation was not that high when you took office?
Well, look, the pandemic had hit the economy, hit America and the world with full force at the time that President Biden assumed office. And
which is why it was so low, right? Which is why it was so low when he took office. So I know the factors behind that and what was going on, and you're quite right to point that out. But he doesn't. He doesn't say that.
Well, inflation hit 9% at its peak.
16 months after he took office.
That was due to inflation was lower before the pandemic. That's absolutely true. And into the pandemic.
Okay, all right, enough. So. You know, she can't justify any of this. This Janet Yellen, who actually was at one point in her career a respected economist, and granted, you know, ivory tower, academic, bureaucrat type, but to be reduced to that when you're just flat out lying and carrying this president's water, what's he doing for you? What's he doing for you, Janet? Other than making you look like a total, absolute fool. I mean, everyone around him looks like a whole bunch of fools. And you know what? Those fools, I predict, are going to get voted out. But there's more fools where that came from. Take a look at this. Today, a series of Nobel Prize winners are coming out saying that Trump is bad for the economy. 16 of them. Well, we know how the Nobel Prize works, right? Right? We know who gets the Nobel Prize. And they're not the capitalists. Anyway, 16 Nobel Prize-winning economists see a Trump inflation bomb. This kind of feels like the 51X spooks, does it not? I mean, back then they were like, oh, it's misinformation, disinformation. And now you get the economists saying, oh, it's Trump that's going to cause inflation. Listen, I am going to tell you this. No matter who comes into office, you're going to be dealing with inflation. You just are, because of what was unleashed thanks to Joe Biden, courtesy of the third stimulus check, courtesy of Chuck Schumer's massive spending program, and courtesy of none other than Jerome Powell's Federal Reserve. Okay, they just printed and printed and printed the most money we have ever seen getting flushed into the system. Right? That is why you are going to have inflation, regardless of who is president. It's one of the reasons why I keep saying, you know what? If there's one thing you can do, it's to look out for yourself. And I'm really proud of what I started with my venture with Rob Horton, brilliant stock picker, 76 research. I feel so strongly that you have to take care of yourself. You have to look out for your future and your family. And you better not be relying on Uncle Joe or Uncle Sam. And you can't really rely on the big banks and their financial research because they have such a interest in pushing their own books, so to speak. Well, Rob and I don't have that. All we want is for you to succeed as investors. So we put together the 76 report for you, as well as 3 different model portfolios that you can get for an additional charge. But this is great. This is a special offer. I just said to Rob, you know what? It's my sort of way to kind of give back to you guys, because so many people say, what do I invest in? What do I invest in? And I really wanted to be able to come forward with some concrete ideas. So we've got the 76 report. It's just $1 right now. We're putting it out there. You get a few months, I think two months at $1, just $1, and it's $9.95 after. But $1 a month. With code word dollar, DOLLAR. Go to 76report.com. Use that code word dollar. It's my gift to you right now, because I want you to make sure that you're focused on markets, that you're paying attention to your investments. And for an additional 23, guess what? You can get one of the model portfolios, 10 to 15 stocks each. We've got a basic income builder portfolio. We've got an American Resilience, which is a growth-oriented portfolio, and we also have an inflation protection portfolio, which, believe me, in light of everything that's happening right now, in light of all of this, you need to think about. You just do. You have to. I mean, I want you to, right? Because even if it's just $10 a week, you need to invest for the future, because those $10, if you don't invest them, they're not going to be worth the $10 that you thought you had. I mean, that's just the reality of what we're dealing with. So don't put it under the mattress. Don't just lock it all up in savings. Start thinking about investing in any which way that you can today. 76research.com or 76report.com. Use code word dollar. Speaking of investors, I'll tell you, the smart money knows who they're voting for. Let's go to Kathy Wood, who's a tech investor. Actually, she's been underwater a bit because she missed NVIDIA. That's kind of a big deal. You know, if you're a tech investor, you don't want to miss NVIDIA. Anyway, which is back up today again. Anyway, let's go to Kathy Wood. She is a decently informed person, and I love this because she's being asked who she is going to vote for. I'm disappointed that she has to justify it, which is exactly what she does, but increasingly we're going to see less of that.
Trump or Biden?
The word is, so as I've said to my children, so I have 2 girls and a boy, and they're split on this. As I've said to them, look, I am going to vote for the person who's going to do the best job for our economy. I am a voter when it comes to economics. And on that basis, Trump. I mean, So Art Laffer describes the first 3 years of the Trump presidency as the best in U.S. economic history. Not the last one because of COVID, and I would agree.
Wow.
And I went through Reaganomics too.
All right, smart lady. And Art Laffer is a smart guy, let me tell you. In other words, the real people that have real money on the line, not the Nobel Prize winning economists, they're voting for Trump because they know what tax policy means for America. They know how much we'll suffer if we continue to allow this inflation to be unleashed under Joe Biden. If we continue to say, okay, we're going to prefer this group over another. Kamala Harris saying we're going to give minorities all of the deals. I mean, it's not, what happened to the meritocracy? What happened to being a colorblind society? That doesn't exist anymore. That is not good for the economy. That is not good for capitalism. That is not, frankly, capitalism. Thank you very much. You like the casual look today I'm seeing on some of the chat. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I always take a compliment, and I'm going to spread the wealth around and give a compliment to my friends over at Balance of Nature, balanceofnature.com, where I get my fruits and veggies every single day, you guys. I'm just blown away by this new offer that they have because I just saw it yesterday. Usually you get 35% off, but now it's 50% off. It's a special summer offer, so you can get your fruits and veggies every single day too. It's important to take your vitamins. It's important to exercise. I mean, I talk about your financial health. I mean that in terms of your health too. Take care of yourself. Put yourself first. Look at Balance of Nature, balanceofnature.com. You can use discount code, my name Trish, for the 50% off. You guys, that is fantastic. Or call them at 1-800-246-8751. Again, using my name, discount code Trish, balanceofnature.com. You can read all the testimonials. You don't have to just take it from me. Although I told you, my kid's music teacher called me the other day too and said that he was taking this stuff and loved it. And I was like, wait, you watched the show? Actually, he listens to it. If you aren't listening to it, make sure you go over, show us some love over on Spotify or Apple. I'll try and put those URLs in the show note as well, because I'd love to have you just rate the show 5 stars only, please. Like, subscribe, make sure you make a comment here on the YouTube channel. We're just growing and growing and growing. We're now upwards of 300,000. Thanks to you.